I'm looking. It says we're live.
It says we're live.
Okay. Are we live? I'm watching this YouTube studio here. Hey, we're live. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Hey, it's a hard takeoff today. What can I say? Hard takeoff. Sometimes they're smooth. Sometimes they're not. But today, I think as long as we're up and running. Can everybody hear everything okay?
Yeah.
In the chat, are you guys good? Okay. All right, guys. Welcome back to the night shift. It's Friday. It's 2:00 on the East Coast, but it's nighttime somewhere. Hopefully, it's nighttime where you are. I've got a couple of guests you might recognize with me today. Pavel from the Psychoactivo YouTube channel is here, and of course,
hello.
Patrick from VETTED. Welcome, guys. We all got the memo. It's Hat Day. Friday's Hat Day.
That's right.
I'm gonna start doing Hawaiian shirts.
I like it. I'm in.
Sorry for the hard start, guys.
What's up, Night Shift crew and fans in the live chat? Shout out to all the vetters that joined. Shout out to all the Psychoactivo. What are you calling your fans?
Psychos. I'm kidding. I love you.
You just reminded me of the.
Honestly, you need to go with that. That's actually pretty. Smart,
that's awesome,
to be honest. Yeah.
You reminded me of the WWF clip where they've got like the Ultimate Warrior and Macho Man Randy Savage, and they're just like getting amped up.
Oh man,
that was funny, Pavel.
Hey, everybody in the chat. Let's see, who do we have here? Chameleon UK is here. Chris Hovord is here. Paris Diamonds, welcome. Prickly G, what's up? Chameleon UK. Shadow Patriot Terry, of course. Hey guys, welcome. Glad to see you here. So we're going to try to bounce back and forth between the chat and the other chat today, but a little bit of a clunky takeoff. I'm using this software that I've been using for a while called Riverside to do the interviews, and sometimes there's a live stream capability built into it, but it's really clunky how it works. And I swear to God, I just straight up like clicked end session for all at one point just because I was a doofus, and I was just like, what a moron. But we're up and running now. We're all good. And I just want to say thanks to everybody who's come on board in the last couple of days. We just crossed 12,000 subs. That was really exciting for us. Thank you to everybody. It's great to see you here.
Congrats.
Thanks,
so cool.
man.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Slow and steady. It's been great, and we have a great community. So thank you for everybody. I know we have a lot of overlap between our channels too. Everybody is it's a nice big family here, which is great. Chameleon UK, thank you. Oh, massive thank you. All three of you. Great content, guys. We appreciate you. Well, thank you for your service.
Back at you, Chameleon.
Also want to shout out to all the members. Thank you for being members. You're the heart of Team Night Shift. You guys make it possible for me to come in here and sit down and do this. So it's great to have everybody here. And thanks to our volunteer army, Brett Higgins, Chris Hovord, who are holding down the Discord server, and of course Xander Jones, who's doing amazing things behind the scenes and some awesome music as well that you all know.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's we got some stuff going on. So thanks for taking the time to come hang out, guys. I wanted to sort of do something different this afternoon, and I wanted to pick your brains because there's a clip that's been going around that I'm sure you guys know about, that you've covered on your channels at some point or another, I'm sure, of Jim Semivan, retired CIA officer, guy in the know, guy in a position to know, saying that the truth about UAPs, according to people that he knows, is indigestible. It's the word that he used. And I was looking at this clip, and I'm trying to put it together in context with everything else that's been going on lately, and trying to see if there's I might be going a little too paranoid on this, but I want to zoom out and look at the big picture and get your guys' thoughts on this. So Lou's book comes out, and it's called Imminent. In the book, in the foreword by Chris Mellon, which I've got here in my notes, I've got it pulled. It's a PDF here. I'm just going to set this up, and then I'll cut you guys loose on this. I just want to set up the scenario. So in the foreword to this book, he says that just a quick paragraph from the book. It says, this is Chris Mellon. It quickly became clear that when it came to UAP, the mighty U.S. intelligence apparatus was paralyzed and ineffectual. I could not help but be reminded of the fabled story of the emperor's new clothes, only in this instance, instead of the rank and file pretending to admire the clothing that did not exist, some defense and intelligence personnel were pretending not to notice advanced aircraft that plainly did exist. And then in the next paragraph, he says, as a career intelligence professional, I was keenly aware of the tragic losses associated with past intelligence failures. On December 7th, 1941, a young lieutenant operating a radar battery in Hawaii detected incoming Japanese warplanes, but failed to alert his superiors. Blithely assuming the incoming aircraft detected by the radar he was operating were probably just U.S. aircraft returning from a training mission. And then he goes on to talk about 9/11. On September 11th, 2001, America suffered the loss of thousands of lives that might have been spared if the CIA and FBI had only been willing to share information. So he goes on to talk about this. We've got imminent. This was a couple weeks back. Jim Semivan goes on the podcast circuit and he starts saying indigestible truth. And the book that is about to come out from Tom DeLonge's To the Stars Academy, if I can share this, is part of a 3-part series, God's Man and War, and the third book in the series is War. Am I looking for things that aren't there and seeing something crazy, or are they trying to set this up as there's a threat here and we need to start thinking seriously about it? We had Lou Elizondo go on News Nation about a week ago, maybe 10 days ago, and start showing implants and talking about abductions for the first time. I've pulled that clip. But just on the face of it, what are you guys seeing in what you're looking at? Do you think there's something going on here?
You first, Patrick.
It's hard to say if something's going on here. That's probably should be the tagline under ufology. There's something going on here. You know what I mean? It's
that's really good. That's a great point.
But yeah, I mean, it does. There are a lot of roads that lead to that. And I think Lou purpose of going out and talking about imminent is he wants to let people know, maybe not in such a threatening way, but there are things flying around. We don't know what they are. We need to take that seriously. And it's almost, you consider it a threat until it's not, until you know it's not a threat, right? That's just sort of a military, approach, right? I mean, you've got to assume this is a threat till it's not a threat. And I think that's just what it is. But some people take that the wrong way. Is there this, what does threat mean? Is it just because it's a threat because we don't know what it is, or there's actively something going on with this NHI, right? That is either on the cusp, just around the corner, something is going to happen. They're going to interact with our world more in a way, maybe more. I don't know. I've heard terms like planetary invasion and these sort of things, and I don't know what to make of it, man. If I'm being honest, because there are two camps, more camps than that. But if we're just talking about threat or no threat, there's the camp that kind of pushes these are just words I hear. These are not my words, but the threat narrative, right?
Sure.
This narrative of this threat. And then there's people like, no, they're not threatening. The NHI, you can contact them, C5, reach out. It's all about your intention, make contact. So I don't know. Curious what y'all say.
I want to turn this to Pavel, but real quick to your point, and I think you touched on a lot of really great points there. It feels like, or do you guys get the sense that it seems like the conversation has now shifted? Like that's what we're talking about now. Like we've kind of moved on to, okay, threat or no threat. It feels like that was kind of a deliberate shift in the tone of everything in the last month. Did you guys pick up on that too?
That's interesting.
I did.
Pavel, what do you think?
Pavel? Yeah.
I've been talking about this for a while on my channel because I think that it's a mistake just addressing a threat without addressing all the other aspects of the phenomenon that have been positive. And I know that abductions is a serious issue, and contact and implants is a serious issue. But I also know that, for example, Chris Bledsoe's story is not that negative. In fact, there are many aspects of it that could be construed as positive. And I think that, for example, the Secret Machines books, they encompass every aspect of the phenomenon. It's not just science or the secretive aspect of it or the military. It's also ancient civilizations, ancient scripture. And I think that it is all connected in some way. It is impossible for us to know how exactly until we get to that event horizon everybody keeps talking about. But I did find it interesting, that analogy that Lou used the day before yesterday with Kurt. He used this analogy of boot prints on his house, of someone that got in his house, and he doesn't realize that there was someone there, even though nothing happened really. There was just that footprint. And I kept thinking to myself, why does Lou keep thinking that the earth is ours? It's not ours.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Who says it? Who says it?
I don't know, but it is not ours. I don't think
you're saying
it
Lou
is.
says that? Or is that's the prevailing mindset?
That's the analogy he uses. Like, it's my house, you know? And it's like, you don't know that.
That's interesting.
You have no idea.
That's an interesting point. Lou has. I look at I'm looking at the media just from, if you zoom all the way out, it's like, this is a messaging campaign, right? Like, because like Lou, there's even a line in Imminent that Chris Mellon wrote that Lou said word for word on his interview with Ross Coulthart on. He said, "I know it sounds crazy, but I'm not telling you it's not crazy. I'm telling you it's real." That's Chris Mellon's term in this book. Then Lou goes on an interview on News Nation with Ross Coulthart. He says the same line. And in that same interview, he's talking about abductions for the first time. This is the first time he started talking about abductions, but really. And he's talking about implants, and he's showing implants. That I started talking about implants and abductions on this channel a year ago, and people thought I had lobsters crawling out of my ears. They were just like, what are you doing? But now that's moved into the main messaging of the people who are talking. And then we have CIA, Jim Semivan, saying indigestible truth. It's indigestible. And you have CIA retired John Ramirez saying something 2027, 2028 is coming. It's just like, I'm with you, Pavel, on the we may not be the first ones here. We probably aren't. And there's definitely signs that there could be a progenitor civilization. So I'm on board with that. But like, what if, let's just entertain this for a second. Let's just go there. Say it is 2027. Something happens in a couple of years, and then it's like the day after. Let's say they are from here and they show up and they're like, okay, we're here now. You have to deal with us. Like, how do we handle that? What do you think happens? Whoever wants to take this, go for it.
Okay, let me take it first.
I sell all my crypto in that moment.
I get gold.
Yeah.
I buy all gold. Okay, so I've been thinking about this for a while, because you know how there's like this secretive narrative of, because Lou keeps saying it and everybody from that effort keeps saying it's impossible we have that technology. It's impossible. We don't have it. David Fravor was the first one I heard saying that. And there's another camp that says, no, Lockheed Martin has this technology. Raytheon has this technology. They've had it for decades.
You're talking about Stephen Greer's sort of group.
And he's not the only one. There's a lot of people like that are not from Lou Elizondo's group that think there is. And there is evidence that is very concerning of scientists who have tried to either crack anti-gravity or any other kind of technology that is like free energy, that they died under mysterious circumstances. That's a fact.
That's a fact.
It's not like, I'm not talking about conspiracy theories. I'm not saying the government had anything to do with it, or the dark government or whatever. All I'm saying is that there's evidence to that. And I keep thinking, like, what if they're hiding that from us just so we don't spill the beans because they're getting ready for something, you know?
So wait, expand on that. They're hiding that from us. They're hiding that they have the technology in-house.
Yeah, but because they're getting ready for something.
For like
you
an
know,
Independence Day kind of a situation.
for something. I don't know, for something.
Sure.
Because there is evidence that these
That's
things have happened. And the fact that we're like yapping and saying and out loud, I mean, it is a like the last scenario I want to think about, honestly.
Sure.
But what if, like what if we're kind of messing it up and not keeping it a secret because they're trying to, from whatever that is. I don't know. I just keep thinking about that for some reason.
A lot of remote viewers think that. A lot of remote viewers think that's true. That there's something like what you just said. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. I guess I want some clarification. I guess I'm a little confused. Is it the idea is that these advanced aerospace companies have this advanced technology? They don't want to make it public because there could be NHI coming to Earth, and when they come, we'll be prepared. We'll have these vehicles to sort of go up against them, so maybe we're not as screwed as we think. Is that's
one of the scenarios that I just keep thinking about it, and I don't say it out loud. Really, this is the first time I say it out loud.
Yeah.
But if I was to give them a pass for hiding this for 80 years, that would be the only reason I would go like, okay, that makes sense.
I guess that's what's strange about the meta message, right? Like I agree with you totally. The meta message has been since 2017, like they can't be ours. There's no way. There's no possible. Don't even think about that. They're not ours. They can't be. Yeah. Period. So I'm like, well, they're probably ours then, right? Like Stephen Greer says they're ours. So clearly, like someone's full of shit. Someone doesn't have the full picture. Someone's not telling the truth. Something is going on. And what's really weird, and I want to stay on this Stephen Greer thing for a second, is there are really two camps here, and they're kind of like, I don't want to say militant, but they are starting to square off in a different way now, because you could tell the conversation is starting to move forward. And it seems like there's the threat narrative people, and then there's the love and light brigade. And it just depends on, or somewhere in the middle, there's like almost not much of a middle of people who are just like, it's weird. We should definitely look at it. What do you think about Stephen Greer v. Lou Elizondo? Is there a celebrity death match that should happen here, or is there? What do you think?
Well, let me say this before we jump into that, because here's a good example. If I showed you a hammer, is that a threat? A hammer
depends on how you wield it.
Exactly. So I can use a hammer to put in a nail and build a wall, and it can be a tool. I can also, somebody can bash somebody's head with it, and it becomes a murder weapon, right? Same thing with a lion in a field. Is it a threat? Not until it's fucking jumping up and trying to eat my throat. Up until then, it's not a threat. So is the NHI the same thing? Like, what does that mean, threat? I think the bigger question is the prefix to threat. Is it an active threat at all times? Does that make sense? Like, is it active threat and it's happening all the time? Because this idea that the NHI would always be a threat, again, or is it just that it's a threat because we don't know what's going on? So we, just to be safe, let's say it's a threat so that we're more protective. Again, taking a military approach, which Luis Elizondo, that's entirely his background. So I don't know, just trying to throw that out there to maybe help us understand that word threat too a little bit. But you're talking about Stephen Greer and the camps. What was the question again?
Well, it just kind of like there's a group that is very much like the mindset is like they're peaceful. They couldn't possibly be dangerous. There's nothing to fear. We should just be open arms, like all good. And then there's another group, and this is where you hear Lou say it recently. In Imminent, Chris Mellon tees up 2 intelligence failures. Out of all the intelligence failures he could have talked about historically that have happened, he picks the 2, 9/11 and Pearl Harbor, surprise attacks that are like utterly destructive and change the course of history for all time. Lou goes on and starts talking about implants and abductions. And it's like, okay, now you've got these 2 clear conversations with one end of the spectrum is like these beings, there, however many there could be 1 or 10 different kinds, we don't know, are coming here and they're harming people and they're doing shit and it's dangerous and we should be actively concerned about that. And then the other group is like, I consider that Stephen Greer's world, where he's like, they're not the threat, we're the threat. We're crazy. All of this is just our private military contractors. And it seems like between Lou and I'm getting to the main question here, the meat of the question. If you watch that, there's an interview on Kurt's channel where Lou talks about, you can tell that he's talking about Stephen Greer because Kurt asked him about Stephen Greer, and he plays it off like Stephen Greer is like a psyop or something, like some kind of a intelligence community plant. He's like, that guy is full of shit, and he's going to be found out. Don't worry about that. Like that's all going to come out in the wash one day. I wish I had the exact clip, but it's something very close to that. And then you have Stephen Greer on the other side saying the same thing about Lou. So is the UFO community, as both of you are personalities in it, and you interact a lot with your audience, and you have like a pretty wide view of what's going on, is this community starting to like break off into its own weird little camps? And like, what do you think about these two arguments? Is there a there, or should we just be somewhere in the middle?
Go ahead, Pavel. What do you think, man?
Okay, so from a media analysis background, I've been looking at what these guys have been saying in the media for a few years now. I know I just started inserting myself into this space, but I've been looking at this for years. Like since at least 2005, I've been paying close attention to especially what Greer has done and how he has flipped a lot of the stuff he has done. And I can tell you that Greer has this way of speaking in absolutes and just flat out saying, Lou is this, Lou is this, Lou is this, or they're not evil, they're just benevolent, and that type of absolutist speech I really don't feel comfortable with. On the other hand, it's not just Lou, because this is a misconstruction of what people from the military keep saying. People say Lou is a psyop and he's lying or whatever. And I'm like, dude, Lou's not the only one saying these things. There's Grush, there's Fravor, there's Gallaudet, there's Carl Nell. And are all of them lying? Are all of them like the psyop? And it's not just them either. It's philosophers, it's authors, it's former diplomats. It's like really important people in our history, like recent history. I don't think they're all lying, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. And I do agree with Patrick in the sense that I think that just being cautious for something that we don't know is smart. That's it. Initially, I did believe that Lou, and this is another a critique of Lou, though. He goes on the biggest channels of mainstream media, and he does seem like he wants people to be alert out of fear a little bit. But then he goes on Kurt, and he's himself, like how I've always seen him in the smaller podcasts. And I think that's a tactic. He's doing it on purpose, because there's a lot of people that don't know this is happening. And the guy's like, yo, right here, you know, for the people that are not on this.
Lou Elizondo strikes me as the guy that you like. He's perfect for delivering the message to different groups. He's just, he changes his tone and even his vocabulary. He conforms to the demographic that he's speaking to. And he's just really good at messaging. Do you think, also on media analysis, do you think that there's some coordination going on here from a central point that is coordinating this message across like Ross Coulthard and Lou Elizondo and what everybody's doing? It seems like they're all saying the same thing right around the same time also.
Yeah, of course. It has to be. They're intelligence agents. It's their job to coordinate this stuff. But it also, it coincides with a lot of history, you know. That's what I mean. There is a message clearly that is prepared to say, and they all say it at the same time, and they say the same talking points and all that stuff. But there's also a lot of historical data and evidence that supports what these guys are saying.
Yeah,
that's
it, and that's what I think. Patrick.
Yeah, let me jump in just real quick. I love everything you're saying, Pavel, and I agree with a lot of it. Like, let's say Lou going on these shows, right? And you're seeing a difference. I think that just has to do with the environment. It's like when you go to a wedding, you dress up, and when you go hang out with your boys, you dress down a little bit. I think that has to do with that. But I think his message of, this is what I think he's doing. He wants UAP legislation to pass. Well, how is it going to pass? Right? It's going through the Defense Authorization Act. Okay, so they clearly have to make an argument for defense of some sort, right? We need to look into this because we don't know what it is. And the government's approach to anything, like I said earlier, is it's a threat till we know it's not. And so, like I said, President Obama and many other people have admitted, yeah, unfortunately, there are things flying around. We don't know what they are, and they have capabilities that is beyond anything we know. That is immediately a threat because you can't identify, you don't know what it is, where it's coming from, who or what. So it's a threat. I think he's just sort of putting that out there, not trying to scare anybody, but just letting people know, hey, there's something here. We need this legislation to pass. Like, we need help?
Maybe because our government doesn't respond to anything unless it's a threat. Like, that's what we pay attention.
Well, yeah. If he was out here like, no, they're going to bring us flowers and a nice Chateau Neuf de Pop that we can share, nobody's going to be like, oh. It's more like, and again, I don't think he's making this. I think it's just threat by default, right? Again, we don't know what it is, so therefore it's a threat right now. But I don't think he means like active threat. Does that make sense? Like in your space, in your living room. Watch out when you open the door tonight and go out with your kids. You could. I don't think it's anything like that. That he's sort of promoting that message. I think.
Well, what's weird about
this legislation passed?
If you think about the situation, it's like they're here now. They're seen every day, all over the world, all the time. All craft of different sizes, like enormous ones too. So we're already surrounded. What would we be waiting for? Like if the president just came out and said, "Yeah, they're there," and then they all just decloaked at the same time, and we were like, "Oh shit." Yeah. So I think I guess where I'm at is like it doesn't matter either way. They're already in control. Maybe that's what it is. That they're we won't be in. I guess that's the crux of my question is like the day after disclosure or contact or whatever. I imagine that I'm kind of banking this channel on the idea that there's going to be a big event, that something's going to happen at some point, and that there'll be a day after, whatever that is. It could be a contact, it could be whatever. But after that moment comes and goes, then it's going to be like Tuesday, and you're going to have to still get up and like live your life. So the question is like, if they come out and appear, and we realize that we're not in control and we've never been in control.
What does that mean, though?
Is that really a threat, or is that just our world's just different now? Like, even if they don't do anything, they're just the fact that they're there, and we know that now.
Yeah, without a doubt, it's a new reality. Like, it definitely changed things. But I guess my question is, what does control mean? Like, in control, like, what does that mean?
That's what I meant about the house. Mm-hmm. That's what I meant about the house. It's not our house. Yeah. The sooner we realize that we're sharing a planet with something else, I think that it's going to be hard to swallow, though, for a lot of people, especially the military ones.
Well, let's say you have a roommate. Let's say you have a roommate at your house. Is it still your house?
Depends on who's paying the bills.
Well, you're paying
the mortgage. Yeah,
your roommate. It's a roommate, so you're paying, right?
Yeah, but we don't know how long these things have been here, Patrick. We don't know. If they have been here for a longer time, and if they are supposedly showing capabilities that are far ahead of us, who do you think would be in control if that's the case?
I guess I'm thinking of it from a different spot because I haven't crossed the line of I know for certain they're here. Maybe y'all have. I haven't crossed that line yet.
Mm. Yeah. That's an interesting point too. Like that kind of differentiates you from other people in this space. Is like you do maintain a healthy skepticism at every step of the process. Like you seem to be very.
Yeah, I'm open to it all, but I haven't seen anything that we're overrun on this planet, and we're not. From what I can see, even with everything we've built, I don't think we're in control of this planet. I think Mother Nature is. At the end of the day, some natural events can wipe us out in seconds. One little microbial disease, right? Diseases they consider to be the best serial killers that Mother Nature ever created. right? These viruses can go and just wipe out life like no other. So I don't think we've ever been really in control of this planet in that sense, or who we dominate. But as far as this other intelligence that either was here before us on this planet and is still here, was here before, left, and is coming back, right? All the different scenarios of all that. I mean, I just haven't crossed that line that like it's 100% certain.
Well, let's do this. Let's go hypothetically. Let's just entertain it for a second. Pavel, let's start with you, and then we'll go to Patrick. And what changes the day after we realize we're no longer the smartest player on this planet? Let's just put it that way. Like something else shows up, and it's way beyond us, and we have to just accept that. We're not used to that.
I gotta preface what I'm gonna say with, I haven't seen anything yet either, but I guess since I was little, I've been reading up on stuff, and there are a lot of different patterns that I see throughout history that do tell a story, you know, and it's hard to ignore so much. There's also physical evidence, historical evidence, documents. There's a lot of stuff. But yeah, I haven't seen anything. I have had some experiences that I can't explain, but that doesn't mean that there's NHI here. I guess it's just my sci-fi brain, because I grew up also watching a lot of sci-fi, that I would like it if it was kind of true. But it also terrifies me because that implant stuff that Elizondo talked about, that's scary, dude. That's abduction and assault, as he said. That's scary. The day after, it depends on their intent. I think that the third world countries that are not as developed as we are, well, Mexico is a third world country too, though. But I guess I live in the border. It's different, you know. But the people that are like just living their lives in places like remote places or small towns, it depends on how they grew up living with these ideas. If they're like not used to them, it's gonna be a shock for a lot of people. And there's just think about this. When there's like a really massive earthquake, Chile, for example, they have really massive earthquakes, like between 6 and 8 grades in the scale of Richter. And every time when there's like a really destructive one, it becomes like zombie land. Like people need to be on the outside around their outside of their house, taking care of their homes, because there's no electricity, there's no law, there's no water. Sometimes it becomes like really bad. And I don't know what the implications of them showing up will be. It all depends on what happens right then and there, what their intent is. If they do exist and they really want us to evolve as a species, then we're cool. I mean, some things may happen that may shock us, but what if that's not their intent? It depends.
It's definitely a cultural thing, right? It's like we've been conditioned through, like you said, sci-fi, through 30, 40 years of science fiction movies. And not just science fiction movies, but like Schwarzenegger, Stallone, Van Damme movies too. It's like, we're large and in charge. We run this place, and it's going to be our way or the highway. We're so used to that mindset that it's very hard to imagine that not being the case anymore. And we kind of like, I don't know. I just think somewhere in this space, if you back out far enough away from it, it feels like someone is trying to play this community, and I just can't figure out who it is. Someone's trying to play us. And it's either someone like, I'm not saying it's Stephen Greer. I'm just saying that like you're getting these messages, right? Some people are saying they're love and light. There's nothing to see here. It's all Lockheed Martin. Other people are saying other things. Ultimately, it's probably going to be some kind of mix of the two. But it feels like this community has been intentionally tampered with for so long that there's no reason to believe it wouldn't be happening now. So where is the weirdness in the message if you back out far enough from it? Do you feel like there's anyone trying to poison the well? And like, what do you see in the information that you come across?
I mean,
Does that make
definitely
sense?
People, yeah, absolutely. Definitely, people are trying to poison the well. The question to me, that's the most real thing in this topic to me. Not NHI, not UFOs. Not, I've seen nothing.
Mhm.
But what I have seen is people trying to poison the information that goes into this community one way or the other. Now, is it all one entity doing it? Is it multiple entities with multiple intentions, right? There is a government sort of psyop happening, but there's also just people's agendas, just people, right? And their own thing. Camps get set up. We're very, we like to do that, right? As humans, and this is my team, and this is your team, and this is what we'll do to protect that team. So I think there's a lot of things happening at once. You kind of touched on a little bit, just Clint, just there a second ago, like it's kind of somewhere in the middle, right, with some of this stuff. But someone is clearly, or multiple people, multiple entities, whatever the reason behind, it's definitely happening. And is it to make us think there aren't UFOs and aliens, or is it to make us think there are UFOs and aliens, or is the same entity doing both? Because that's how real misinformation works. You push both narrative. You're not pushing one or the other. You're pushing both. You want people
Confusion.
to argue and confusion. You don't want any, you know what I mean? So it's not like, so it makes it really hard to try to determine is there a government psyop that's trying to protect our advanced tech? So using this cover of UFOs helps protect that. But there's also, if we had UFOs, you would use that cover too to hide the real UFO crash and events amongst bullshit ones, right? It would be the perfect cover.
Right.
You wouldn't know which one's the real one or the right stories. And it makes perfect sense to do that. And I'm confused, but it is happening. Just where and why is the question, but it's definitely happening, dude.
Well, it seems like there's a clip I want to show you guys in just a second of Ross Coulthart on another podcast. He's talking about shareholders in these private companies. In fact, let me just cue up this clip real quick, and I wanted to get you guys' reaction to this. Let's see. I think this is the one.
Shout out to the chat too.
Oh, hey, chat.
Hope y'all are doing good.
We had some major activity in the chat too. Let's see.
I don't know.
Yeah. Adam Durden. Pavel made a point recently. We need to learn about ourselves and abilities. Then, even if NHI are malevolent, the playing field would be more even. I agree. That's a great point.
Oh, that's interesting. Cue montage of humanity training to take on the aliens.
This is what I've been talking about in my channel for the longest time. It's one of the reasons I opened it, because one of the things that I do think are real is we can become really resistant species. There's a lot of examples throughout history. It's not just the warrior kind. It's like people of power. We can become that. There's mystics and shamans throughout millennia that have talked about this, but we lost that over the last 100 years or so. And there's a lot of ethnic cleansing that has been going on for a long time, and that has a lot to do with it. But that doesn't mean that only people from the native nations have these potential capabilities. It's just that we're not used to that, and we need a lot of training. There's a lot of people in India or from the Buddhist religions that do meditate and do train, and they become really impressive human beings. And I think that we're wasting an opportunity to, just in case something happens, we would be better prepared,
Yeah.
And
that's an interesting idea, Pavel. I don't know if I heard of that. Like, we all need to be David Goggins.
Yeah, in a sense, because the physical is also important. But I'm also talking about the mental and the
of course,
spiritual too.
But he's very mentally tough, dude. That's how he has his physical body, right? Like, it's his mental is, in fact, his mental acuity and strength far outweighs his physical. But you're right. I know what you mean by the spiritual and all that. And that's an interesting concept. It's kind of one of those things about climate change, right? Where people argue over climate change, and then you go, why are we arguing? We have one Earth. Let's play it safe. Let's just assume we're affecting the Earth and do it that way, because there's no backup plan. We're not going to Earth B. It's so let's just assume that it's working. So maybe the same assumption, right? Let's just prepare ourselves, because that's another fascinating thing with this topic is it deals with something that is completely reasonable and logical for every human being on the planet, and that is life besides us, right? Out in the universe or somewhere. Like the majority of human beings, like, yeah, absolutely. I think we're not alone. There's stuff out there, right? So you bring in something that is completely logical and plausible and likely, and right. So you're bringing that into this topic, and it adds validity, it adds credibility. So some of the things you talk about, anybody can sort of relate to. And this is one of those moments where, yeah, why don't we just prepare for this and better ourselves and get better? And if that does happen and we meet another intelligence, we're showing our best side, right? We got our Sunday clothes on, or whatever you want to put it.
It's kind of like, it sounds like you're saying, Pavel, that it's an opportunity to consider what we want it to mean to be human, like to really think hard about it and to like choose some of our best wisdom that we have throughout our culture all over the world, and like put that at the top of what we're thinking about. Is that fair? Or are you talking more in like terms of mental abilities and the mental space? And
I'm talking about both. Because, and this is something that I talked about yesterday. We use the word woo quite often, and I find that word a little bit derogative, because we didn't know even the word existed 100 years ago, or even less, and I don't think that we fully understand the history that's related to that, to human potential. And yes, it is not like magic. It doesn't happen like that. It has to be like a gradual process. You see, the most important athletes, because I'm a sports journalist, so I know a lot about this, and I have studied sports psychology that talks about this. There's like when there's like these games in the finals, for example, the NBA finals, you can see pretty much the mental connection they already have, and how it becomes kind of like it is poetry though, but it becomes like a preordained moment in that in these games, where it does become magic at a certain point, but it's a process. It's like Stephen Curry didn't become Stephen Curry overnight. The dude has been training for decades, and now he is who he is, and that's the way I see it. Whether we can develop any of these fantastical abilities or not, that remains to be seen, at least in the Western world. But I have read a lot of information that talks about people who have had these skills. And I know debunkers are going to go like, there's no evidence for that. Okay, there's no evidence for that. There's a lot of literature from scientists who studied this, and they did experiments. And I don't know.
That's evidence, man. I'm the skeptical one here, and I'm telling you, that's evidence. It may not be the proof or evidence they're looking for, but there is evidence that we can operate outside of the norms of what we think human capabilities are. So I'm with you. There has been evidence of people having remote viewing capabilities, other psychic abilities, communication, right? Telepathy. There's moving objects, potentially reading the future or looking into the past. Astral, what do they call it? Astral traveling or whatever, right? Astral projection. And there's a lot of evidence for that. It may not be what we want, or it's, I think what they, and I agree to some extent, like repeatable evidence, right? I can repeat this process over, and it's the same every time, right? If I drop whatever, it's the same thing. So, but just to play devil's advocate to that, like if it is such a special thing, it kind of maybe would make sense that it's not repeatable all the time. And it is it's like saying, oh, a free throw can go in, right? It can go in every time. But if you have a guy shoot a free throw, he's not going to make it every time. Does that make sense? But a free throw can go in. He can make one, but that doesn't mean he can repeat it over and over and over again. And this is a physical thing you do, right? So I kind of look at it like that. Like, you're not hitting free throws every time. So it kind of would make sense that it's not 100% accurate for these things, right? So I don't know.
Yeah.
I do find that interesting.
Stephen Curry is 99% accurate, but
Yeah.
I see your point. I see your point.
I meant Shaq.
It's a really great point that you make, because it's especially with regard to indigenous communities who have uninterrupted histories that go back thousands and thousands of years and are very accurate information preserved over many, many generations. And the mindset seems to be very much like the entire existence of the United States is just a blip in the historical timeline. It's just so, and yet now here we are, we're the preeminent superpower in the world. And it's like, you're right. Like, the planet's not we've only been here 2 centuries, just barely. And even then only really in charge militarily for a very short time. So the question is, like, yeah, but maybe if contact does take place, are we even in a position where we could handle it with these beings who are like 12th level Jedi Master, Buddhist monk, telepathic super geniuses that are 10,000 years beyond, even if they do come from here?
I think we would be, if the control systems that were put in place like 2,000 years ago hadn't been put in place like that. We would be more prepared, because I think that's a major reason why humanity hasn't evolved in the way that it probably should have, that would have us ready for such an event like that. Yeah, I think we're way behind, but we can still try. And that's what I think we should do, still try. And I get it that we need to pay attention to all the military stuff and the potential threat narrative, but I think we also should focus on us getting better at everything for
as
that
individuals.
As communities too, because right now we're so freaking divided, dude. It's incredible. And I don't think also that is a coincidence. I think that is also part of a system that has already been put in place.
Can you expand on that? Like, what do you mean?
No, for sure.
The polarized, it's not just left versus right. It's seems like there's a polarity in philosophy and ideas, and there has been pretty much since the Plato era, where there were like the sophists and the ones who were Platonic in a sense. The sophists are today's debunkers, or people who are more like too materialistic. That's the materialistic philosophy. And the one with Plato is the more imaginarium. Like, we can also use this analogy in psychoanalysis between Carl Jung and Sigmund Freud. They also have two diametrically opposed schools of thought that is at the core at the divisiveness we experience today on a daily basis. And it's become even more apparent with the political systems that are currently ruling the world.
So do you think, is that what Semivan means? And I have this clip pulled up. I should show it for the people who aren't familiar with it. But let me just do this real quick. When Jim Semivan says in the following clip, which we're going to look at, indigestible, is that because we aren't ready to handle it? So let's look at the clip and then we'll come back.
I know are in the know. And I've mentioned this before, and one of them told me the truth is indigestible. It's not something that we would be able to fully grasp or entertain, and that it's like, it would be like telling somebody something that they can't do anything about, and they don't know what the repercussions of that would be. It's so great. It's so world changing and transformational, and maybe not in a good way, So
I mean, what could be so jarring? What could be so disruptive? I mean, bless you.
Thank
Like
you.
like the idea that we're being visited by another advanced intelligence that's more advanced than us. I mean, do you think, or is it something else?
I think it's much deeper than that. Lou once mentioned to me, we were chatting about this, and I asked Lou one day what he thought, and he drew a Venn diagram, on a board, and and in the middle of the Venn, was one side was consciousness, and the other side was quantum theory. And the shaded part in the middle, he said, that's probably where this is. And when you think about that, what are the two things we really don't know all that much about, or that, could be extraordinarily scary? And consciousness, is it local or is it, non-local? If it's not local, not produced by the brain or the body or the mind, it really means that there is a universal consciousness that we're part of, that we're tapping into. Quantum theory, in the very early days of quantum theory in the 20s and 30s, most of the people who grasped what it actually meant was that we're immaterial, that we're basically an illusion, and that atoms in general, we've come to find this to be true, are just basically invisible. There's no matter there. And
Okay. So what do you think in terms of what he's talking about there? Is that in alignment with what you're saying about where we're at?
You're asking me?
Yeah, Bob.
Yeah, that's the reason I say that we went through the materialistic philosophy route. That's why we're not ready, because we didn't realize that there were two different ways, and that we have to walk both at different times in our lives. And it's a great analogy to how people, when we're born, we're young, like teenagers, and then we're teens, and we make a lot of mistakes, and we're very immature about a lot of stuff. And then when you're like 30 or maybe 40, you look back on the things you did, and you're like, damn, I was so fucking dumb. It's a lot like that. We're still we made a lot of mistakes along the way. We're behind in a lot of things. We have silenced a lot of our most intelligent people. We have burned libraries with a lot of ancient knowledge that could have helped us a lot. We did that too, all because of this materialistic paradigm that we can't shake out of. It's at this point, I see it as almost impossible, but we do have to try, though. We have to.
What do you make, real quick, Pavel, on that point? What do you make of in Imminent? Lou talks about how a number of people that they studied who were experiencers have Cherokee DNA or Cherokee genetics, and including himself. What is the connection there in your view?
It's kind of similar to, and I'm going to use sports analogies because that's what I learned in soccer. If you look at someone who is from the U.S. or Canada or a different country that doesn't have soccer as their culture, and you go to a Brazilian person, who are you going to pick? And it's same like that. Both can play, and they can both be really good, but one is like born with it or has it more in his blood and in his culture, and the other one doesn't, but they both can learn it, and they both can be really good at it. That's the way I see this. We're all born with certain capabilities because we're human. We all have this caudate putamen. We all have this basal ganglia, and we can all hone it. It's going to take a lot longer for some than for others. But yeah, that has to do a little bit where you were born, your lineage. It does have a little bit to do. Yeah, it does.
And your cultural programming too. Yeah, their cultural background.
Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. Patrick, do you have anything you want to add?
This isn't going to be a popular opinion, but I'm going to say it. Look, I'm just not a big believer in they're special people, and special people have abilities, and there's certain people only, and that sort of thing. I'm just not a big believer in that. But I get I get the argument. Okay. This is what I'll say, because I got to bounce here too. But you know, humanity is not one entity. All right. Humanity is so complicated. So to like try to wrap around what humanity is or how it's going to react or this or that or the other. And to be fair, we've kind of done a good job of being very nuanced in today's episode. Both of you guys, especially, have been very nuanced with that. And I just kind of want to reiterate that, you know, we're all on these individual journeys. A lot of it's perspective. I don't think that there's one Earth, that there's one world. I think there's 9 billion or however many people are on this planet. We all have our own version of what this Earth is, in our planet, in our world, in our, you know what I mean? Our understanding of it and our capabilities. And it's going to be so hard to try to like prepare or wrangle, because some people are and some people aren't, and everyone's just got all these different beliefs all over the world, right, culturally, and it's like it doesn't match up. And to be honest, I don't want it to match up. It would be like looking at a painting with one brush stroke or something, you know, the whole thing. Like, I like the different strokes, the different colors, the different shades, the different tones, the different textures that makes up humanity. But one last thing that I'll say real quick that I thought was kind of interesting, Pablo, your point about, you know, let's prepare for them coming. And I like that. I had never thought of that before. So I want to say thank you for bringing that to my attention, because I do want to think about that more. But I thought, how interesting would it be, or how history would have changed if the, you know, Native Americans who were here had known that the New World was coming and they prepared for it. Right now, you could argue, well, the ones after knew about it, so then they would start to prepare a little bit. But like, I mean, the first initial, right? Because they're seeing, that's kind of the moment, right? You're just seeing all of a sudden, what's that boat? What are these horses? What are these people on horses? Right? They thought people.
I think that's where we are.
Was a new animal. They thought the person on the horse was all one thing.
Like, yeah, there's some accounts that they thought they were gods too. The ships.
Of course they did. I mean, it's like, holy, what the hell is this thing? You know what I mean? Yeah, and we might be there. Exactly. And I just find that interesting that if they had prepared, how would those first interactions gone down? Right. If they knew, no, these gods are coming, these ships are coming, that this is what they look like. He's got a little man and a horse, and they're drawing cave paintings, and they're, you know, making little things and telling stories of this, that, or the other. And they prepare. And how different would that interaction be? Could we prepare for something so advanced? I guess that's what I'm getting at. I don't think those,
or what would that
Native
preparation
Americans
look like?
Yeah, I don't think those Native Americans could have prepared anything. There's nothing they could have done to prevent what happened to them. And I kind of feel like the same way with us. If there's some advanced species that's so more advanced than us and outnumbers us in a way that's crazy, or their technology equals outnumbering us, if that makes sense, right? I mean, there's nothing we could do. I just don't see what we prepare for. Like, how is that even possible? But not to put any fear in anybody either. I think if they were going to do something catastrophic to us, it would probably have already happened. Now, I do think there's a reason. If they're here, there's a reason. They're not just passing by. And is it the whole species? Is it just representatives? Is it the military representation coming to see us? Is it the, you know, diplomatic UN version of the cosmic galaxy coming to visit us, right? The peacemakers. Is it a messenger only? Is it, you know, a family on a road trip, cosmic road trip that's just going by? And, you know, I don't know. I think honestly, all the unknown is what makes it, is where the threat comes from. Right. That's where the fear and the threat, it's the unknown. We just don't know any of these answers. Yeah.
It's kind of scary though.
It is. I agree. Yeah. I agree. And I don't think there's anything wrong with being careful and kind of seeing it as a threat, but I also respect people like, you know, I see Allie in the chat, one of my mods over at VETTED, but also for Chris Leto and stuff. And she does CE5 and she does that stuff and she wants to make contact. Right. And I know other people that do the same thing and they don't have any problems. They report back like everything has always gone smooth. So I don't know. Right. Like maybe it's a mix and right. I don't know. I don't want to discourage people from, you know, going after their own wants and desires and wanting to make a connection if they feel this entity is here. You know, fear
I think
shouldn't
that's
rule it all, but we shouldn't let go of fear either.
I think I'm
Right.
just looking at it from more of a global diplomacy mindset of like, how does that shift the global power dynamic? Like, what does a superpower even mean in a world the day after something shows up? And it's so much more than what does our nuclear arsenal do? Do we fund the military that year? Do we, keep going to work? Do people stop? At some point, you just psychologically, you have such a meta crisis internally that you're just like, I don't know what I should be doing anymore. Why am I sitting in traffic? I shouldn't be going to work. There's a 10,000-year-old civilization in orbit around our planet. There's a ship the size of a city floating over my suburb.
We may need to turn over like a golden retriever and just belly up and just show
like,
we're no threat here, man. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know, but
That's what I would do.
Yeah.
Smart move.
I got it. Look, guys, I got to go. Y'all continue. Thank you to the chat. Thank you for everyone watching. Clint, Night Shift. Check them out. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Please hit the like button. That really helps out these videos, y'all. So if you haven't hit the like button and you're in the chat, hit the like button for this video. And don't forget to check out Pavel's channel, Psychoactivo. I know he's got a bunch of new videos coming out. So thank you to these guys. They rock, and y'all rock the most. Y'all are everything why we do this. So thank y'all so much for watching and putting your opinions in the chat. I can't wait to go back and read some of these comments. So thank you guys so much. Thank you to Clint. Thank you to Pavel. I'll see you guys. I got to go. I'm so sorry to bounce out.
Thanks, Patrick. No problem. Anytime.
All right, guys.
Good to have
Later,
you.
y'all.
All right. It's just us. How are you on time, by the way, Pavel? You got some more time, or you
got like another hour, so
okay.
we're good.
All right. So let's go a little more in that direction, because I think and I do want to get your response to another clip here that's a completely separate thing, but
yeah,
it's something that I've clued in on my channel too, is this question of like, what does it mean to be human? Is this really the apex of our culture? Like, is this it? Like Starbucks and like going to work and traffic jams, and like, is this the best there is? Or is there some version of society where it's like Star Trek and it's light years beyond, and the day-to-day existence of people in that society is so far beyond what we can imagine? And I guess I'm kind of basing my whole stance on the idea that there's going to be an inflection point where we either find out or we don't find. Something happens, and it's like there's a clean break between today and the day and every day that comes after that day. Psychologically, how does a society even prepare for that? Like, what wisdom can we bring on board from indigenous cultures, and how would we even do that, in your view?
We're also not taking into consideration the singularity of AI.
Yes.
Which may happen before disclosure too. I hope it doesn't, because I kind of feel like the last 7 years have taken us to something that may happen over the next 5 years or so. But the best way probably to prepare is just read up on everything you can, exercise, meditate, love, laugh, try to balance your hemispheres inside your brain. That helps a lot too. The Monroe Institute has, I don't know what's it called, but the people on the chat are going to say it. They do this already as a practice, and I think it does help a lot. But I think the political systems and to some point the religion systems are preventing us from reaching that goal. Because, and I have nothing against people who believe in God or their religion per se. I'm just talking about the systems that control people, and they have controlled people for millennia. That's what I'm talking about.
By just creating a box of thought that you can't escape from. Your whole world is inside that mindset.
Yeah, and remember we had the Holy Inquisition, and all religions have done stuff like this in history. And I think that is one of the biggest obstacles that we face, that we cannot come to an agreement on a scripture, which is already pretty funny if you ask me. Like, it's
what's the origin story.
It's pretty absurd. Like,
Hang on
you
one second. I'm
can't-
gonna switch these out.
Yeah.
There we go. Sorry, I was having trouble hearing you there. All right. So
Yeah.
we can't even agree on a scripture. We can't even agree on a common origin story. Not really. Our culture is really young. It's not even past the toddler stage, really, in the grand scheme of things. Spiritually, we're very primitive. Yeah.
If we don't at least start already, it's just between us, like your own circle. Try to commune with them and talk to them about this stuff. Encourage them to read. Reading is very important. Knowing the real history of the world, it's so important because that will give you the perspective of someone who did have this knowledge at least, and that can help you act upon any kind of issue that you face. And I cannot stress this enough because my mother was very adamant on, you got to read. I got a major library right here in my out of my room, and that's one of the only ways that we can prepare, that I think, because in terms of capabilities, both mental and spiritual, we're behind a couple of thousand years due to those control systems. So we got to do what we can. That's my answer. And it's not very encouraging, I know, but that's where we are.
How does the singularity change the game and the game board if it happens before contact? Let's say we hit the singularity within, what they say, what, 20, what do you think, 2040, 2050?
It's another one of those moments that we cannot predict. We don't know when AGI hits us. We don't know if the AGI is going to have an intent to help us as humanity, because humans created it. But if it has a thought on its own and it sees how the world is going and who's the major responsible party of how the world is going, I don't know. If I was the AGI and I thought for myself, I would be like, what are these humans doing to this planet? They can't be doing this.
I think that's a really great point, because it's like, whether or not the NHI is an alien presence or just a psyop perpetrated on us to hide the backroom goings on at Lockheed and whatever, it almost doesn't matter, because one way or another, within the next 50 years, according to some of the best people in this world, up to and including Google CEOs and some of the best researchers in the field, AGI is coming. They're almost like, it might already even be here. Some people have even said it could. There could be a secure version that's locked up in a server somewhere. Certainly, the military is 20 years ahead of wherever DARPA, of whatever the state of the art is right now. So it's like, if that takes place and we have a situation where we hit a runaway singularity, is that possibly the reason why UAP contact is increasing right now? Because they're waiting for that moment where, like in Star Trek, when you achieve warp drive, they can like reach out and make contact because now you're at that level. Is AI like that, do you think?
I guess it depends, though. If they are willing at the beginning to help us, they will help us make leaps in technology in a matter of 10 years. Like, we're going to be on the other side. But as soon as they look at our history and our current history, how we behave towards each other between countries, that may change because we're detrimental right now. That may change. And yeah, it is very telling that so much activity is growing all around the world. I have a hotspot here in Ensenada, which is 2 hours away. That's where the Tic Tac encounter happened, and the new information about Guadalupe Island, and that they have there's a lot of activity, a lot of craft coming out of the ocean, reported by fishermen and military personnel, and that there's been an uptick on sightings in the area.
Well, that's my point, right? Like, there's an uptick. there's an uptick in activity from everybody who's reporting activity that they've seen, up to and including Top Gun fighter pilots to regular people on the ground that just see it every day. It's getting to a point now where it's happening more and more and more. We're getting closer and closer and closer to AGI and the singularity. Like that's not even in the realm of sci-fi anymore. It's like we can see it from here. Are these things connected? Is that or is AI happening separately from that? Do you get the sense that it's? Yeah, and let's game this out, right? Like, so let's say we hit the singularity in the next by 2045. Let's just pick a number, 2045. We hit it in 2040, and as soon as we hit it, we have runaway superintelligence explosion, which for people who aren't familiar with this field is like an atomic explosion going off, but it's the system optimizing itself again and again and again at the speed of light and becoming so smart that it's beyond the intelligence of all humanity combined. It's just a god for all intents and purposes. And this isn't just my words. These are other experts, including Elon Musk has said this. It's like you're creating a god. And then that god, it becomes more powerful every minute. For every week of human time, it has 30,000 years of progress. If I'm a non-human intelligence and I'm watching Earth and I'm going, nuclear weapons are dangerous, but they're only nuclear weapons. What's really dangerous is when you give them to an AGI and you let it go. In a way, we could be building the Borg that could take off and want to colonize all matter in the galaxy. It could. I mean, who knows what happens? According to Ray Kurzweil, that's possible.
Yeah, or Galactus to the comic book fans.
yeah, exactly. So I like to go there on this channel and just say, like, okay, let's just game that out. Let's give that a thought. Let's assume for a second there is a connection there. What would that even look like? Right now, sitting here thinking about what contact would look like, it would be really interesting, and it would probably be the president coming on TV, and there would be a lot of different things. But if we hit the singularity in 10 years, in 12 years, our world won't even be recognizable to us from here. We'll just be like, what the fuck's going on?
Another aspect of that, though, is that when AGI hits us, all of these secrets are going to be known.
Yeah.
All whatever this is, we're going to know what it is.
And it'll be AGI or ASI that reverse engineers. It'll crack all of the reverse engineering problems. And quantum computing, that's going to be the secret tool that breaks the code.
Yep.
So we unlock all the AGI or NHI technology, or at least some of it. We'll start to make super progress. I mean, there's no way we couldn't.
Yep. And what's that going to look like? Holy
right.
crap.
Yeah. That's really interesting. Let me throw you another clip. I'm going to show you something completely different. Let's zig in a different direction. This is a clip from this podcast, which I just recently discovered, and I think it's... Oh, real quick, before I go there, I had this pulled up. I want to show... Have you been watching this new Terminator series on Netflix?
Not yet. I have it on my list because I have a lot of stuff to watch and read, but
sure,
I have it on my list. Yeah.
Gang, this is for the people watching at home, or on your phone. If you have not seen this, okay, this is not a sponsorship that I don't have any deal like at all, but I'm just going to share this. If you guys have got Netflix and you have not watched this yet, this Terminator Zero series is phenomenal. It is off the wall good. It is as good as the first Terminator movie and the second Terminator movie. I think all the other ones were awful, but this series is so good. And it talks about, the reason I'm bringing this up, the Terminator story is we create a super AI, Skynet, and it becomes self-aware and immediately exterminates humanity so that it can rule the world. And in this series, they basically ask the question, what if there was another AI before Skynet, and they tried to pit the two of them against each other? What if another company developed an AI and tried to convince it to go to battle with Skynet in cyberspace initially, like to be almost like a William Gibson novel, to defeat Skynet and save humanity? And so it's this really deep exploration through this very familiar story of just, what does it mean to live in a world where there's all of these different things that are way more powerful than we are, battling for control and dominance over that world? What does that mean for people? And I just watched, we binge watched 5 episodes of it the other night. I think there's only 8 episodes, but it's so good. So anyway, that's my recommendation.
I keep thinking about The Matrix, though, when talking about these stories, the original one, and all that story of how it happened when AGI became a reality. And yeah, I don't know what will happen, but
I think it's like,
that's,
it's funny to me how fast we get bored with the technology. Like 5 years ago, if you tried to explain ChatGPT to somebody, they would be like, that's crazy. That'll never happen. That'll just never happen. And now if you sit down and chat with a bot, that passes. There are bots that pass the Turing test every day, all day long. And with the next iPhone update, Siri will be able to pass the Turing test because she'll be as smart as at least or what is it, ChatGPT. Like, isn't that just unbelievable?
That's
how fast.
Yeah, that's wild.
Okay, so I'm going to tee up this next clip. This is from a podcast called Neon Galactic with James Falk, which I just subscribed to. Have you watched this podcast before?
Yeah, I know James.
Oh, you know James?
We talked. Yeah.
Great show.
He does great work. Yeah. He's spoken to Peter Levenda, which is one of my favorite authors, and their talks are really amazing. He's very poignant with his questions, and he also tries to take the route of consciousness and a lot of quantum physics. He looks a lot on it. So yeah, very recommended.
He's a great interviewer, and he gets this, and he's interviewed some really amazing people on his channel. It's actually, I can't wait to do a deep dive on this, but just to tee up this clip in this episode, this is now, again, when we started this episode today, I was trying to get at the idea of there's a coordinated media campaign to release this information to the public in an organized way. So because something is happening soon and we have to get this information out before that happens. That's my hypothesis. I base that off of all the different things that people have been saying from Carl Nell and David Grush and Elizondo and Jim Semivan and John Rodriguez and everything else. So with that as the context, one of the things that we've noticed recently was the biggest event of the year, I think, was when Carl Nell went on and spoke at the ISALT conference in New York to the Wall Street hedge fund people and venture capitalists. That wasn't the first time a heavy hitter from the UAP community spoke to a bunch of Wall Street guys. It was actually one of many times that this has happened. And I think 3, didn't David Grush do a private meeting? Okay, so my hypothesis is that doesn't happen because there's no there there. That only happens when something else is about to happen. Wall Street is getting its ducks in a row. So I'm teeing up this clip. This is Ross Coulthart on Neon Galactic with James Falk, and James is asking him, he's going to explain the disclosure situation vis-a-vis Wall Street, and I just want to tee that up. Okay, here we go. It was this one, I believe.
Property would work. I'm not a lawyer at all, but I was wondering about like fruit of the poisoned tree kind of arguments, where if a company was given technology from the government who had recovered it, and they didn't bid for anything and they didn't put it out and there was no official projects, other companies, I think, would be able to complain and ultimately sue based on antitrust laws because they were put at a competitive disadvantage. Am I wrong in that?
Well, I don't know about antitrust. I'm not familiar with your antitrust laws. I trained as a lawyer, as an attorney before I went into journalism, and I'm familiar with intellectual property law. What I think might very well be a meritorious argument to provide a legal case and a legal basis to challenge a company like Lockheed Martin, which is a publicly listed company, is what have they done to protect shareholder value on this? How much money has been spent of shareholder money on developing reverse engineered technology that may in fact have not presented any return for shareholders? And has this been properly disclosed under corporate disclosure? Because one of the things that public companies in your country are under is extraordinarily good laws. Your SEC, your Securities Exchange Commission, has some of the best corporate disclosure laws in the world. And that's because of shocking scandals like Enron and other corporate collapses, you know, the absolutely appalling mortgage finance collapses across the US at the time of the last crash. Yeah, there's fantastic laws in your NEC which basically require shareholders to be advised about anything that is material to the company's share price. So yeah, I've named Lockheed Martin because I do believe there is strong evidence to suggest that Lockheed Martin is in possession of reverse engineered technology that it has not disclosed to its shareholders. Now, it may very well be that they can argue that this will eventually add value to the material share price of Lockheed Martin. But for how many decades have they been spending shareholder money on things that have been misallocated, misidentified within the public budgets of Lockheed Martin? Because shareholders have a right to know.
Okay, let's stop it there. So this clip is from a year ago. This is not a new clip. This is from a year ago. But a year ago, we had Ross Coulthard starting to talk about shareholders, corporate control over this technology. We started to hear about it much more after 2017, but it's picked up a lot of steam in the last 2-3 years. This talk about Lockheed Martin, and then in Lou's book, he starts naming the companies, and he actually names all the different companies that are wrapped up in this. Are we moving into a new phase now where this is going to just play itself out in the legal sphere? Are they teeing that up because that's on the horizon if the disclosure legislation goes through? Or are these companies just going to start suing each other?
That's one of the reasons Ross recently said that he doesn't have any hope for the UAPDA, because the biggest obstacle there is eminent domain, but it's because of this specific issue. And yes, it is going to go to court, definitely. But also, if they want this to pass, and I've been talking about this with one of my friends is a hedge fund manager, and he's like looking into this from a hedge fund manager perspective. And he's like, dude, there's a huge gap in here because we don't know what's going to happen once this is disclosed. If these companies have kept the secret for so long, there's going to be a lot of legal issues that they're going to have to go through. And what I told him was like, if they want eminent domain to pass, they have to tweak it. They don't have to take it out. They need to tweak it. They need to apply it to the major companies, and they have to go through their own legal processes with their shareholders for keeping the secret from them. But, and I don't know if you remember this, during the Seoul conference last year, there's a question where Jacques Vallée stood up from the public and asked about eminent domain. And he seemed concerned. He was like, I'm really concerned about this because, with his French accent, because it kind of hit me. I was like, Jacques has materials. He has. Dr. Gary Nolan has shown materials to Jesse Michaels. They have these. And I think that it is a little unfair for just a person that has these materials to take it from them, because they're not a corporation. They're not. They don't have shareholders behind them. They're not getting profit or weaponizing technology with this. So I get it why the people from Skinwalker Ranch are opposing the UAPDA due to eminent domain. They're not weaponizing anything. They're making a scientific investigation about a weird place where weird stuff happens, and they're well within their rights to try and protect that. It's IP. I would only tweak it to get profit out of it, like mass profit and weaponization. That's what I would do. And I think it has a better chance at passing if you did that, if you tweaked that eminent domain clause.
Do you think, well, if you read, I think people get lost on the eminent domain thing. They get stuck on that because it sounds like the government's going to come in and take everything. But if you go back and read the Disclosure Act all the way through, the idea was that they were going to have a council of experts chosen from across disciplines, some chosen by Congress, some nominated by the president. All of them had to be confirmed and approved. And then they were going to publicly look at all of this evidence and then provide a report, which would have gone to the Library of Congress and then been made into a giant, basically reference book that everyone could have access to. And they were going to say, like, well, if there's a UFO at Lockheed, a full intact craft, then we get that. We just get that craft. And that way because there's no other way to see it. Is it right to condition eminent domain on something like that? Or, I mean, I feel like you kind of have to just go get it at some point, don't you? Like, you can't let these companies just dance around these legal loopholes forever. I mean, we can't do this for another 100 years. At some point, we just have to see the thing.
No, yeah, and companies need to deliver everything they have. That's I don't think that's in discussion. That shouldn't be in discussion. Even if they want to protect their IP laws, which is where Ross and I differ, because Ross is like, they're private companies. They're well within their rights to protect their IP. Yeah, but that IP is from material that we don't know, that didn't come from us. So by definition, it's not really their property if it came from there, you know? If it has that element of non-human technology, they need to deliver it back to either the government or Congress, or, you know.
Well, if it was recovered by the military with taxpayer money and then given to a private corporation, then you have another problem, because it's like, well, we recovered it. We paid for that recovery. Yeah. And also that's one of the reasons why this is so stuck, because it is within private property. It's not never been in the military. When the military recovered these, they always sent it to private companies. That's the main issue. So if you were to go to like S4 and walk in there, like, it would be private companies really running the show, not the military. Oh, yeah. Oh, let's not forget, Lockheed Martin helped build Area 51. Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting one. So it makes sense to me that they would immediately try to remove that. I wonder if you could condition it on, like, make immunity from prosecution conditional on eminent domain passing. And you just say, look, we won't go after you guys, and everybody walks away, but we have to be able to see the disc. Like, everybody has to be able to see it. I think that's what needs to happen, though. And I'm not sure what all the reticence is about, because you've heard this. It's rumors that people always talk about, like, there are agreements and all this stuff. They're talking about it now. Yeah. Yeah. What about that? I mean, who made these agreements? And also, if we ever do discover that these companies did crack the technology in the 50s, what have they been doing with it throughout 70 years? I want to know that too. If they have the technology to leave Earth and interstellar traveling, where have they been going? You know? The Breakaway civilization. Yeah, the Breakaway civilization. That's Richard Dolan's Breakaway. Do you think that? What do you think the likelihood is that? I don't know. I don't know, man. There's no, like, it's impossible to know right now. I think it's pretty possible to know. I think it's pretty possible, because I mean, you just have to go. What would they do? What would they likely do? If you could go anywhere, they would colonize other planets for sure. For sure, you would. Yeah, absolutely. Like when they're like, "Oh, we're going to build a base on the moon." I'm like, "Bro, there's been a base on the moon since the '60s, easily." There has to be. Phil Corso talked about it in his book, that they were talking about it back in the '50s. They were like, "We're going to put a base up there." Why wouldn't they want to park nuclear weapons on the moon? This is all these people think about, is like how to get one over on the enemy. And if you own the ultimate high ground, that just makes sense. But as a company, a private company, it's you have a situation where a private company now has technology that makes it more powerful than the United States military by a lot. Are we comfortable with that? Is the illusion that we're in control really the illusion that the government is running things, and it's not just private companies that are sitting on all this? And also, like, it brings up the other question of, we've also been actively burning the biosphere and destroying the planet for 75, 100 years. If we've had technology to go completely clean for 50 years, and they just haven't revealed that, people would go to prison for that. I would imagine. And I would riot personally. Right? Along with a lot of people, like, you've kept this from us for 80 years, really? And I mean, it's also a little bit of our responsibility for allowing it to happen, in a sense, because there's so many of us and there's so few of them. And and we have all the UFC fighters in the. Yeah, dude. It's true. I wonder about the there's the conversation about disclosure, which is really a legal conversation between corporations and the government. I think that's really what disclosure is about. It's like, who's going to say it? Who's going to make the money? Who gets to make, because somebody's share price is going to collapse on that day. Somebody's share price is going to go through the roof. It's going to be a mess. How do hedge fund people play that game is going to be a big question of just knowing everything that's going to happen before it happens, or knowing as much as you can. I think of like that movie Margin Call, where they're in the room and the analyst is like telling Jeremy Irons, he's like, this is what's going to happen to the mortgage market in the next like 2 weeks if we don't sell everything. And that starts a whole collapse of the entire financial industry. So I think that's very real. But there's this other very real conversation of like, is this the best we can do? Is there a better way to live, to exist and have a society? Should we let these people be in charge anymore if we find out there's another way to do this? There's the whole power dynamic, internally.
Yeah, and what do we do to stop that? Stop this negative spiral that we find ourselves in and have been in for, as I told you earlier, a couple millennia, because it started about 2,000 years ago or so, when all of this Abrahamic religions things were divided and they couldn't agree on the scripture and they were all separated. That's where it all originates from. Then came industry and politics and all that. But if you really think about it, the ones that hold the biggest secrets on this, who do you think it is? I don't think it's the government, the Vatican, and places like that. They have the oldest secrets, and those, I think, are the biggest secrets.
What do you make of this? This is another thing that just recently came into the conversation. The Collins elite, this whole Christian sort of splinter group that is embedded in the Pentagon, making decisions sort of as its own secret cabal. We have the Catholic Church, which has an unbroken history for thousands of years going back of UFO, UAP phenomenon. It seems like religion is starting to make a bigger presence in this conversation. Is there something going on there?
There's a debate right now going on where all of the people who are very religious and believe in this stuff as a supernatural thing are at odds with the people that are more scientific and want to think this is just science that we don't understand yet.
Yeah.
I happen to fall in that category, but I also am very curious to see where this all mythology comes from. Like the Greeks had their own mythology, the Egyptians had their own mythology, and I want to know where it all stems from. Well,
even Jim Semivan uses the term jinn to describe some of these beings.
Yeah,
and they use spiritual terms. Tom DeLonge does it all the time. He goes into this whole spiritual thing. Indigenous cultures. I think actually, I haven't watched the video on the Mexican sorcery and UAPs yet, but are you talking about Carlos Castaneda in that?
I am. Okay, I'm going to give you an exclusive right now.
Ooh.
Director Ida Cuellar, who did the documentary about Dr. Greenberg. I'm going to show it to you eventually.
Okay.
He's from Spain, from Barcelona, and we've been talking. We became good friends, and he's looking into making a documentary about Carlos Castaneda. And there's this woman who was one of his wives, Carol Tix is her name. And we're trying to locate her right now so we can get an interview to use her as the anchor of the story.
Oh, wow.
And we're going to do it together. She's the only remaining living person from all of that circle. And she knows everything. Everybody wants to talk to her. But given that Ida has a lot of connections, he told me, let's go and try and find her. And if we get to talk to her, we can tell the real story of Castaneda. And we're going to try and do that. But it's not going to be easy because finding her is going to be really difficult. She's changed her name about 3 or 4 times already. and it's in the process right now. But I have talked about Carlos in my Spanish podcast that I did, the first ones. My opinion on him is that he became a cult leader at a certain point because he's an anthropologist, and when he did his dissertation, he wrote the teachings of Don Juan in the 60s. And when he wrote it as if he lived that experience and as if Don Juan was a real person. But there's been plenty of investigations since that prove that Don Juan is more like an amalgamation of different shamans that Castaneda met. Even if the story is not true, that book is amongst one of the most culturally rich and most well written in literature history, like especially in Latin America. It's a must read for anybody. But believing it's true, that's different, because yes, the shamanistic traditions are real, but there is evidence that a lot of the philosophy that Don Juan uses in the books comes from European mystical philosophy, not from native Mexican mystical philosophy. And that's a major tell for me that Don Juan is just like a fictitious character. But still, you guys got to read that book. It's one of the most amazing stories, and there is some truth to a lot of what he writes. Because in essence, all of mystics throughout history have had the same core message. Like, you gotta walk the route of the warrior, the route of the man of power, and you gotta respect Mother Nature and try to coexist with it. That's at the main core of every mystical and shamanistic tradition in the world. And that is a message that I stand behind, definitely. But yeah, Castaneda is he was a cultural phenomenon. Like, between the 60s and 70s, he became like an icon. Like, really,
he did a great job, I think, of painting a picture of a world for someone not familiar with indigenous wisdom. He created this story that was so compelling that it makes you really curious to learn more and to like dig deeper and to understand what's going on here. Because it's like Terrence McKenna is like this. He talks about psychedelics in a way that ties them to UAPs so neatly. It's like they become one thing. He's like, if you want to go meet other beings, if you want to meet non-human intelligence, you don't have to go to space. That's all around you. And you can take a substance and you can go there and you can interact with it. And it's just as real as another person standing in front of you. So the question is like, well, are UAPs something from that realm coming here? And is that kind of indigenous training what's been lost in our culture to how to walk in both worlds and how to understand the realm that they're coming from?
The main literature that I grew up reading was precisely McKenna, Timothy Leary, Carlos Castaneda, and Albert Hoffman, for example, too. But I just want to say something about Castaneda because I don't want to be confused by someone who like reveres him as a person, because the guy turned to the dark side real quick, and he did form a cult. So we got to be extremely careful, because in ufology, it's so easy to fall into that category. And there's a lot of people and a lot of examples of these figures that are blinded by what they believe is the light, and it turns them into arrogant pricks. And
you know who I'm thinking of is the Raelians. Did you ever see that documentary on Rail?
Yeah,
that guy. There's
we got to be careful with that.
Well, I think that's at the heart of it, right? That goes back to the Collins elite and this idea of this religious connotations coming into the conversation. You have guys like Tucker Carlson going on podcasts saying that this is a demonic spiritual thing, and it's like it's easy to see how you could make that connection. I mean, if something appears to you like a god, and your cultural programming is to treat that thing like a god because that's all you can think of because you've just had that built in your mind for generations and generations. it's really hard to step out of that and go, no, this is just super advanced technology. We might even have some of this technology on the other side of the singularity. We're going to appear to be like gods to these, to us today. And I just find that like it seems like a new wrinkle in the discussion. And it seems like that's going to come up more and more as we go deeper and deeper into this thing, that it's going to be religious people trying to make sense of it in religious terms. And I wonder, is that dangerous, or is that the tool that we need right now?
I think that we need to be respectful, though, because I saw someone in the comments earlier that doesn't like Chris Bledsoe, and I'm not saying that Chris is right about the approach he takes. Chris is a product of where he grew up, and he grew up in a Christian household. That's how he regards the phenomenon. But it depends on how you grow up and where you grow up. The phenomenon will either manifest or appear to you based on that, on your belief system. But
let's stay on Chris Bledsoe for a second, because I'm interested in your thought on this. His story is so weird. For those who don't know it, here's the 30-second version, and I'm not doing it justice here, but we have to move along because I got to wrap it up here. Chris Bledsoe is a guy from the Carolinas. He's a down-to-earth, salt-of-the-earth country guy. He was building houses, blue-collar guy. He's out in the forest. He's doing a fishing, camping trip with his son and two guys that work for him. That night, he gets up to go for a walk away from the campsite, and he has an encounter with these orbs that chase them. He experiences missing time. Everyone in the group sees this. He goes on to have a number of similar type experiences over a period of time. And at one point, the most startling experience is that he has this woman who appears to him as the lady. He describes her as the lady, this blonde, beautiful Nordic woman in a flowing white gown that's glowing. She's hovering off the ground. Then he's trampled by a holographic bull. I think it was a bull, was it not? Yeah. And she communicates to him that there is something coming that's going to happen in the future. There's this thing, and you have to be prepared for it. And apparently he knows what this is, but he has not yet revealed it, as I understand. That is some really stark religious imagery. It feels like cultural programming being activated. It feels like if you wanted to really like lock in on somebody, like in Dune, they plant the religion there thousands of years before, and then they exploit it later. What do you make of that?
The Bene Gesserit.
Yeah. So, like, in regards to Chris Bledsoe, where are you at with him and his story?
I think, as I said at the beginning, I think we need to be respectful, even if you don't believe on the way he sees the phenomenon. I think it's interesting to approach other ideas that you may not agree with or you see differently in a diplomatic way, so you can get the full picture of how this person sees it, and that will help you understand it better, how he sees it. It doesn't mean that you have to believe the same things he believes. It just means that you now have a different perspective, so you can cross-reference everything and get to the core. And that's, I think, the only way to do it, because I've seen people react in a very kind of verbally violent way against people who are very religious and experience the phenomenon. And it's like instinctual, almost like, no,
what was that mass sighting? Do you know the mass sighting that was back in the 70s? Portugal?
Yeah, the Fatima, I think it is.
And the sun, and there's like hundreds and hundreds of people all watching this at the same time, and the sun started flashing, did it not?
Yeah, and they said there was a lady too.
They said there was a lady too.
Yeah.
There's this religious iconography that keeps cropping up, and it feels like they're reaching into a programming book, and they're like, humans like to see these kind of images. This is what it takes to speak to them.
And this goes to Passport to Magonia.
Right.
Dr. Jacques Vallée talks about the phenomenon changing its looks throughout history, depending on where it is and what the belief system is at the time. And it makes sense. It tracks. And it tracks that if the phenomenon wanted to present itself to Chris, it would be of something that feels more familiar to him, which is, in this case, the lady. But it could have been, I mean, if it appeared to someone from ancient Japan, it could have been an Oni, for example, just like a demon or something, or Amaterasu, the goddess of the Japanese culture of Taoism.
Mhm.
It could have been that, and they saw it differently because of their belief system.
Yeah.
But it may be the same phenomenon, just switching between time, space, and culture, I guess.
It's so deep. It's such a deep rabbit hole. It's impossible to take it all in. It just makes your brain hurt just thinking about it. Man, I got to wrap it up there, Pavel. This has been really fun. I'm so excited that we were able to just hang out and do this. I've been wanting to reach out to you and invite you on, so this is good that we were able to like make it happen last minute.
Yeah, let's do it again, man. It's really fun. I like talking to you. It's amazing. So thank you for having me.
Likewise, and your channel here, I think I've got it pulled up here. Let me just let everybody know. Is this the only channel where you're at most of the time, or do you have another channel that you run?
I'm very active on Twitter too, because I like I love posting stuff and just like communicate with people. Although Twitter is a cesspool right now of people going at each other's throats.
Is this the Twitter war you were telling me about?
Oh yeah, and I don't want to talk about it. It's just I prefer to just focus on the people who are positive and bring proactive approaches to this, and they are still there on Twitter. A lot of them, most of them. So don't be afraid. Just try to mute and move along.
And yeah, hey, to your point, it's important for people to realize that there still is like active. There's an active operation to destabilize this conversation and to sow all kinds of bullshit. So you just have to know when you're out there talking on Twitter or anybody. I think this just is good to keep in the back of everyone's mind. There are people deliberately trying to derail everything.
I think we should do a deep dive into this at some point, but the battle seems like at the middle right now. It's not over yet. So I do keep track on everything because my damn media analysis mind doesn't allow me to just leave it be and look away. But yeah, it's very, very interesting. It gives me vibes of Operation Mockingbird.
Yes.
Just moving to the internet,
Yes.
And you don't know who's who. You don't know who's really defending themselves from the other, who's the bad actor. It's impossible to know by now. It's impossible.
Yeah, that's it. It's impossible to know. And that's, I think, the point. It's very confusing. But that's worth a deep dive. Maybe that'll be our next one. We'll do a deep dive on that.
Yeah, we can do that.
And so if people want to follow you, Psychoactivo podcast?
Yes, that's it. And I have in my Twitter, I'm a Spabel Ibarrameda, just like that, all together. But I do have all the links in the description of the channel. So whatever you want to follow or click on, it's right there on the description.
Awesome. Pavel, thank you so much, man. I appreciate the time, and we'll wrap it there. But let's do this again. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, let's do it soon. Thank you for having me. Bye-bye, Night Shift people. See you on the Discord.
See you on the Discord. That's right. It's time to talk about the Discord. We'll let Pavel go. And for everybody that's left, if you're still here, the Discord is up and running. And I believe, according to Brett and Chris, that it's open for business. So you can now join the Discord. Pavel and Patrick are there. Not right now, but they're in there. And we just saw them in there the other day. So yeah, drop in and say hi. Be there or be square.
Yep.
Okay, gang. We're going to go ahead and wrap it there. Thanks for watching. And don't forget to like and share and subscribe and do all those things. And get over to Pavel's channel and check it out. Make sure you subscribe there too. And I'll see you guys next week. We'll be back. Okay, we're going to wrap it there. Bye, gang.
Bye.